say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. It is me, again, Jay Izzo. I know every week it's the same guy, right, with the same show, who does the same thing. We try to help people find a new direction in their life, their business, and their career. And today we have, well, I always say it, right? We have another great show, and we do, because here's the thing. I've got Ken Rutsky. Here's his book right here. I know some of you can't see it. Hey, Wendy. So Ken Rutsky, Launching to Leading. Oh, whoa. This is going to be about marketing. All right, so here's what I want you to do in the next 20 to 30 seconds. I need you to talk to anybody that you know that is interested in marketing and B2B marketing. Jeff Snell, welcome to the show. You're going to love this because Ken does a ton of B2B marketing. But I'm going to tell you, I don't care if it's B2B, B2C, the things that he says in this book, I am going to tell you right now, are going to apply to anybody who is trying to make their business better and make an impact, all right? Because things have changed, and Ken talks about the things that have changed. You're going to love this. Again, the book, Launching to Lead. I'm going to be talking to Ken Rutsky in just a second here. But before I do that, let's do what we do every week, and that is I check in with you in the 4 areas of your life, right? Because I believe we're 4-part people. I believe that we're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual beings. And so I want to check in with you. How are you doing this week, all right? So here we go. So physically, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding. How are you doing physically? You feeling good? Are you doing things to take care of your body? Are you doing all those things that are necessary for you to be healthy? You know, are you getting a little exercise, eating right? Sometimes just putting down the fork, okay, that can be a helpful way for you to be a little more healthier, right? Have you been getting your checkups? You've been doing the things that you need to do. So on a scale of 1 to 10 physically, where are you at? Okay, you got that number? Okay, good. All right. So mentally, where are you at? What do I mean by mentally? Well, what are you feeding your brain with, right? We have a left brain and a right brain, right? The left brain is more of our logical brain, or the right brain is more of our creative side. So what are you doing to feed your brain? All right. And on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being great, how are you doing feeding your brain mentally? You doing pretty good? You feel like you're gaining knowledge? Listen, it doesn't matter how old you are. The truth of the matter is you can always be exercising your brain. Well, you can always exercise physically too, but your brain never has to stop, regardless of what you do, okay? And regardless of where you're at physically, okay? Never has to stop. So where's that number? You got that one? So you got 2 numbers, okay? Good. Now, where are you at emotionally? Scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding. How are you doing emotionally? What do I mean by that? Well, so for instance, what's your emotional intelligence quotient? Right? So do the little things tick you off? Are little things making you upset and angry? How well are you able to relate to other people's emotions? How well are you willing to relate to other people's emotions? Maybe that's even a better question for you, right? So on that scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing emotionally? And remember, emotions are one of those things, right? We can be intentional about our emotions. We do not have to feel what you feel right now. You can intentionally change your emotions if you want to. I don't have to feel sad, even though there could be all sorts of circumstances. Circumstances do not have to dictate how we feel. They just don't. It's up to us to do that. So being better in control of your emotions raises that score. And then finally, where are you at spiritually? And what I mean spiritually is that I know that we all believe in something outside of ourselves. We don't want to necessarily admit it. We will deny it. We will say we don't. But the truth is we do believe in things that we can't explain with science. We can't explain with any other thing. We believe that they give us hope. They give us a sense of peace or a sense of happiness. For some people, that is God. And if it is, how are you doing with that? For some people, maybe it's nature. For some other people, maybe it's karma. For some people, maybe it's just the whole idea of being able to be part of something else that's just bigger than themselves. Whatever that may be, the question I'm asking you is, we're on that scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding. Where are you at spiritually? And now you've got 4 numbers. Now the whole point of doing this isn't to get you from wherever your number is to a 10 today. The goal here is whatever your number is right now in any one of those areas is what can you do to get to the next number? That's your goal. Okay, however that may be. whether that is putting down the fork or maybe reading a book like Ken Rutsky's Launching to Leading. That might not be bad for you mentally, or being able to purposely say, you know what, I'm going to be controlling my emotions today. This is not going to, I don't care what happens to me today, I'm not going to allow it to bother me. And then spiritually, it could be, you know what, I'm going to make a change, right? I'm going to follow my faith. I'm going to believe in my faith and make a step in that direction, whatever that may be, right? The whole point is that those 4 numbers are like the 4 legs of a table. And so if they're uneven, right, try eating off of an uneven table. It makes things difficult. But if they're all too low, imagine trying to sit in a normal chair and then trying to eat off that table. It makes things really difficult, right? So, all right, you've all checked in, and I see there's people joining us, and I appreciate that. And by the way, I've been asked about this shirt. Oh, why am I wearing a Holt physical therapy shirt? Well, I'll tell you why. Because so I've been wearing, people who've been giving me shirts, I've been wearing them on the air, and I've been telling people, okay, I'm going to wear your shirt, right? Now, this also means, Jamie, you know, because I know you and Lou own this place, and I come to see you a lot. You could also be a sponsor if you want to do of my show. But Holt PTS, physical therapy, we really do appreciate you. You guys are awesome. And you know what? I would not be able to do what I do physically had I not gone to see you. You've gotten me through several surgeries. And you know what? The truth of the matter is you do get me back in the game. And even at my age, I constantly am getting hurt because I won't quit doing what I do. And so I thank you guys for doing that. So Holt, thank you so much. So let me introduce our next guest, because our next guest is outstanding, and I love him. His name is Ken Rutsky. He is the president and founder of KJR Associates Incorporated. They're providing marketing and business strategy services to B2B technology vendors. Ken has 20 plus years of experience marketing and selling enterprise and user technology and solutions. During Ken's tenure as Vice President of Product Marketing at Secure Computing, he spearheaded the company's go-to-market efforts, accelerating the growth of its web security business, leading to its eventual acquisition by McAfee. You may have heard of them. They may be on your computer right now. Yeah, they could be. At a 40% premium to market value, Ken has held executive roles at Intel, Netscape, McAfee, and ran marketing at 3 startups, including Coalition, which was acquired by IBM Tivoli. He is sponsored today by none other than, you know what, the fine folks who are our sponsors, and that is Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. Inline Business Brokers and Advisors have helped literally thousands of clients in the sale and purchases of businesses. When it's time to sell your business, folks, contact the professionals at Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. You can learn more at inline.com. That's ENLIGN.com, and we appreciate them. And now, without further ado, everybody, would you please do me a favor? Give our guest, Ken Rutsky, a big hand. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jay. It's great to be here.
So, Ken, you and I talked before the show, and I'm holding up this book here for everybody to see, Launching to Leading. It's how B2B market leaders create Flashmobs, Marshal parades, and ignite movements. And I read this, like I do, I read all these books. This book is one that people are going to have to read, reread, and reread, and you're going to get so much out of it because there's so much in this book. I mean, I was telling you before, you could have taken one chapter of this book and made it a book. And so I'm commending you on that because there is so much in this book. And I've had to reread it. I don't know if people could see this, but I got this thing like just highlighted like crazy. Okay, I mean, my highlighting pen ran out. I had to go to the store in the middle of this book and I had to get another highlighting pen.
Oh, there you go. You should have just unhighlighted parts of it, maybe.
I really did. I literally had to go to the store and get another highlighting pen, and I couldn't believe it. So okay. So let's talk about this book, Launching to Leading and Marketing, because one of the things that you point out very early in this book is that the marketing game has changed completely.
Yeah. I mean, the world changed, right, with the internet. And then even more so, I think when Google became so prominent in the way we find and access information, because it really did just change the way we communicate. And, I like to say, I have 4 kids. And I won't bore you with of how great they are, right? But, it used to be the dads, what did the kids do when they didn't know something? Everybody said, go ask dad, right?
Right.
And dad would make the answer up, even if he didn't know it.
Right.
Now it's like, go ask Google or go ask Alexa, right? So
Right.
we've gone from a world where information was really hard to find to one where we find so much information, we don't know what to do with it. We don't know what's true and false. And, that ripples through everything, not just marketing, but life. And so that's been a fundamental change, and that's really changed the role of sales and marketing in the world too.
Yeah, so this is the point, I think, of the book that you start off with so well, is that for the marketer, okay, the marketer has to understand that this change has occurred, but there are really some major shifts that have been created over the course. I mean, some of it's a result of technology, but some of the ways the consumer is now treating everything. So why don't you give us a little more insight into how marketers need to start thinking about some of these changes?
Yeah, I think you start with that information becoming commoditized, and then you see some other things happening too. Competition has become so much greater, and the markets have become so much more crowded, especially in business-to-business markets. What's happened is a lot of the barriers to start a business and to promote it, have also gone down dramatically. Excuse me. And so, who would have ever thought, for example, that the world's largest online bookseller would become one of the world's largest IT vendors?
Sure.
It's crazy. And, Amazon is one of the most important technology vendors in the world now. And they started by selling books. So you never know, where your next competitor is going to come from. And even if you're a local business, you may find yourself competing with someone who's in India doing it online with, maybe less expensive resources. So, we've got to compete with a lot more people,
right?
Both for business and attention. And then third is, buyers have become really, really in charge of the process. You used to talk about a sales cycle.
Right.
Well, there is no sales cycle anymore. It's truly become a buying cycle. And, as a consumer and a purchaser of things, I think that's great. Buyers should be in control,
sure, not
sellers. And so, I view that as a really positive thing for society. But that doesn't make the job of sales and marketing professionals any easier. In fact, it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, this concept of the buyer is in control, to me, it all started with the internet, because I felt like as we started getting more and more websites, when the internet was created and all of a sudden we were doing e-commerce online, I felt like we were seeing this major shift of I get to consume my information in my way.
Yeah.
And then, I read your book, right? This book, Launching to Leading, Ken Rutsky is with us here on A New Direction. I'm reading your book and I'm going, you're right. And by the way, it doesn't matter, B2B, B2C. The consumer is in control of how they want to consume the information and how they want to buy. So this whole old marketing adage, right? We used to try to do the whole marketing thing, and you bring this up in the book, that, we used to try to sell what our features were or what our benefits were. But that's no longer working, according to you.
Yeah, benefits matter, right? But the biggest challenge marketers have, and I think, you're right, this is B2C or B2B, is starting by getting attention of the buyer. There's some research from an organization called the Corporate Executive Board, and they put out a stat. They said 57% of the business buying cycle is over before the first interaction with the vendor's salesperson.
Right.
It's startling. That means basically a buyer who's making, could be a large purchase, is almost two-thirds of the way through their process before they talk to a sales rep. That means they're at their short list. They may have started with 20 vendors on their list, and they may be down to 3 before you even get a chance to have that sales interaction. So what that means is marketing, has to take much more responsibility on finding those buyers early so they can influence, the process and provide and actually find the buyers that are right for them before they get to the short list. So it's become a lot more challenging. It's crazy.
Well, it is more challenging because, I mean, what you describe here in your book is almost that, okay, we've got to get there early. We got to get there earlier. And we got to get there faster. Not only you got to get early, you got to get there faster, and you got to be able to break through all the noise, right? So, and being able to do that, and which means that we can't be doing the same things we've always been doing and expecting.
Yeah, yet at the same time, the buyer doesn't want to talk to you. So right. That's, you hit the nail on the head, Jay. Right? Is if we got to get there earlier to influence it, and the buyer doesn't want to talk to us, what do we do? And so, the most important thing from my perspective is to really just shift your mindset from this, what I would call more diagnostic sales and marketing, where we get to ask the buyer lots of questions before we talk about what we do, to a more authoritative model of selling and marketing, where we come in and we teach the buyer something about their business and how we can improve their business before we start spouting out about how great our product is.
Yeah. You bring up a story. By the way, we're talking with Ken Rutsky, author of Launching to Leading. This is we're talking marketing, by the way. If you're in B2B, you're going to love this. If you're B2C, you're still going to love this, because I'm going to tell you right now the principles apply across the board in marketing and how to improve your marketing, because we have to have a different shift. And I thought one of the things that you did so cleverly is because you're a football fan on some level, because because when I read the book, I was like, okay, all right, well, hold up, we got film time, we got drives, we got the second half drive, we got the opening drive, right, and the whole thing, right? So, and of course, what would be better than you taking Coach Kelly from Arkansas, high school in Arkansas, and the guy doesn't punt. Okay, this is a high school coach who doesn't punt. I don't care where he's at on the field. He never punts. And by the way, every kickoff is an onside kick. Okay, so explain why you use Coach Kelly's model as a way for us to start thinking differently in terms of marketing.
Yeah, I read that story and saw an ESPN, I believe, special on him, and it just captivated me. And I'm a football fan, but I'm not a fanatic.
Right.
But what really captivated me was how he took an idea and really changed the way he approached his entire profession. And, he took this idea that statistically he'd be better off, going for it on fourth down. And then he went lock, stock, and barrel all in and said, if I believe that, which I do because I have data that supports it, how am I going to change the way I do things and compete with people who are bigger and more resourced than I am? I mean, now it's like all I have to do is say, well, if you're a small business-to-business vendor and you want to compete with those large giants, find something that's true and commit to it, because you can do it at a lot lower risk than your bigger competitors can. And so that's what really attracted me to that story and to that approach is really the combination of risk-taking, going all in on a truth that you know to be true, and then executing like crazy.
Yeah, but don't you think this is and Ken, don't you think that it's hard for a CEO to take that risk if a marketer, if your CMO, your chief marketing officer, comes into your CEO or COO and says, you know what, we're going to take a risk and we're going to do something. We're going to get away from talking about our features and our benefits, and we're going to create a whole different storyline that's going to align really well with what our consumer is. We're going to align it with their story, right? Which we're going to talk about that later, right? That's a tough sell. Isn't that a tough sell for the marketing officer?
I think maybe a few years ago it was a tougher one. I think that's really changed, and the reason is the data just supports this approach. And one of the things that business has become, as you know, Jay, is very data driven.
Sure.
So when I can come in and say to the CEO something like, 60% of the buying cycle's done before our sales rep gets to talk to someone. And if I can tell them that, research shows the number one thing that buyers want from their sales reps is, industry knowledge about their business. They know about the buyer's business. And second, that they teach them something. And then I can tell them, number 7 is product knowledge.
Right.
And by the way, everyone has product knowledge because they just go to people's websites. So why do we want sales rep wasting time saying what's already on the website?
Right.
If I go to the CEO and say that, and I go to the sales leader and I say, do you find these things to be true? You just get nods. And so the data and the reality that people face is just there. And I think if you point it out and then you follow that with a so what, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to stop punting.
Right.
We're going to do an onside kick every time because the data supports doing it. And by the way, we don't think our competitors can do it as fast because of the risk it creates for them. Wow. Now that becomes a powerful approach to the CEO.
Love that. We're talking with Ken Rutsky, author of this fantastic book that you're looking at, Launching to Leading. And he is brought to you today by our friendly sponsor who has sponsored us for a long time. Our first sponsor ever, by the way, Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. Inline represents profitably private held companies with gross annual revenues in excess of $1 million. Inline delivers the highest market value in the shortest amount of time with complete confidentiality. It is their trademark. And I'm telling you, you should really look up these folks. Jeff Snell and his people are outstanding. Check them out at nline.com. That's ENLIGN.com. And they are bringing a new direction, and they're bringing you Ken Rutsky. And we are so grateful to them for doing that. Ken, there's so many pieces I want to talk about this book, and we don't have time because this is really a 3-day, this should be a 3-day show where we continually go for 3 days because there's no way I'm going to get through all of this book. I'm happy
to come back again, Jay.
Okay, well, I mean, you're going to have to because I want to talk about so many things, but I want to kind of go in a little bit of an order because there's a part of me that wants to talk about the race car, right? And then there's a part of me that wants to talk about aim steep. And because I loved Steep, I wrote you and I said, oh my gosh, I love Steep when it comes to kind of aligning ourselves and thinking about our consumer. So I'm going to let you pick and choose which do we want to go aim steep or we want to talk about building your race car?
I would do it all.
Okay.
The race car is just a really quick thing. We really focus a lot on marketing programs, content marketing, and marketing automation, right? These are the hot buzzwords in marketing today.
Right.
And, to me, the marketing automation and all the process that you put in place, that's all, the body of the car, right? Or the engine of the car, I mean.
Right.
And, your programs are the tires, right? They're what you roll on the road with.
Right.
But if you put bad gas into that car, it's not going to go very well.
Right.
And I think we've gone away from some of the fundamentals of building great messaging that we need to do. And as we said, we need to do differently. And if we put bad gas, bad messages, no matter how good the car is, right, it's not going to run well.
Sure.
And if I see, for every client I see, almost inevitably, the first discussion is, we spent a ton on all this marketing automation. It's working really well. And we're running all these programs. We're really efficient, but we're not effective. And, our lead conversions are low, blah, 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 blah. We're not growing the business the way we should. Why are we spending all this money? Should we keep doing demand gen? Right. It all usually comes back to what's the message and what's the story.
Right.
And, that goes right to the Steep stuff. And, I wish I could say I invented Steep.
I love that.
Steep,
I love that because you point out in the book, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you point out in the book that we always talk about SWOT analysis, right?
Right.
SWOT, SWOT, great. And then you come out and you pull out Steep. I don't care if you didn't invent it or not. There's a rule. There's a rule, right? Because I know you speak, right? And the speaker's rule. The speaker's rule is, the first time, you give the person credit and you said, you get up on stage and go, as my friend Ken Rutsky used to say, and then you
That's
go,
right.
And then the second time you go, you say it, you go, well, I've heard it said, da 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 da, and then the third time you do it, you go, as I've always said, da 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 da. So,
well, we all stand on the shoulders of giants.
Right, we do. So let's talk about STEEP and how that fits into the consumer marketing piece, because I think it's beautiful and it's a beautiful acronym.
Yeah, so STEEP comes from actually international development work where NGO organizations, right, non-governmental organizations would go into a country and try to understand it. And so they said, to really understand a country, you have to understand what's going on in the society, what's going on with technology and their adoption of technology. What are some of the economic factors playing and taking place in that country? What's going on environmentally? And, is it a high pollution? Are they, carbon free, blah, blah, blah. And then what are the politics? Is it a democracy? Is it a dictatorship? Is it a, socialist regime? What's going on politically?
Sure.
And so, one of my mentors, a guy named Matt Church out of Australia, when we were talking about this, he said, well, one of the things, you're telling your clients to do is take an environmental scan of their buyers. Right. And, maybe you should look at this tool, STEEP. And so I did. And we applied it, and I've been applying that for a decade now. And basically, we just ask those questions about what's going on in our customers' world. And it's really just an extended version of the old adage of if you want to understand someone, walk in their shoes. Right. So that's what we do. And by doing that, we can better understand the challenges and the opportunities that are in front of them, not just the ones we might help with, but the ones that matter to them. Right. Because we've got to relate our value, as a seller, right, to something that matters. Otherwise, we just get lost in the crowd.
Ken, I used to, I'm a psychology professional in business, and I work with businesses from, psychological coaching business thing. And so I always I've said for years, over a decade, I've now said, you got to pay attention to the psychographics of your consumer, right? Yep. Whoever, and I don't care, B2B or B2C. Matter of fact, I was meeting with a B2B company, and I said, so what do you know about the psychographics of the people who are the decision makers? Yeah. And they looked at me like I had just, I had grown an extra, eyeball off the side of my head. Because everybody talks about demographics, but they don't talk about the psychographics. And I think what I loved about this idea of STEEP, social, technological, economic, environmental, and then political, is that it applies. It doesn't have to be a country. It applies to your consumer. And that was the beauty of what I thought. I said, man, this is an application of psychographics that is, because typically we look at, BioA, right? Your behaviors, interests, opinions, and attitudes is typically what we look at. And so this was taking that, and I think doing a little bit more, and I fell in love with it. So I'm going to steal it, and then I'm going to say that I came up with it probably about the third time I talk about it when I'm on stage.
That's all good. Just give you a little bit of credit here. And I think it is. It is in a lot of ways the psychographic, profile of the customer. And at the end of the day, I want to find, what's keeping that buyer up at night, right, or what's getting them excited to get out of bed in the morning, right? And if I can understand that, I can then start the process of relating what I do to one of those things. And I said that ROI, return on investment, for sellers, that's just table stakes now. In these crowded markets, nothing gets bought if it's not a positive ROI. The problem is most of the buyers could buy 1,000 things that have positive ROI. Sure. And they're only going to buy 10. Right. Or 15 in a year. So, if I really don't understand the strategic needs of the buyer, and STEEP is a tool to do that, I'll never get higher on the list. Right.
Yeah, I love that. And let's take this thing and stretch it out a little bit further, because one of the sections that I thought, I really want you to deal with, because I have this issue with the word value. Yeah. Because people throw it around like everybody knows exactly what it means. And if you want to infuriate me, seriously, when it comes to marketing, I get so infuriated when people go, well, you just got to provide them value. What? You know, like, what do you mean? Of course, well, what does that mean, right? And you really take apart value. Not that it's exhaustive, but man, you really take it apart. So why don't you talk about, from your perspective, value and what you need to do to kind of maybe understand value from your consumer's perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. We start with feature and benefit, and I think a lot of times a lot of marketers will stop there. I get this feature and it delivers this benefit. Well, value is really in the eye of the buyer.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, this is all markets in general are kind of conversations about the exchange of value, right? And right. I'm trying to convince, as the seller, that I have something valuable, of value to the buyer, that they're going to exchange their two most valuable things that they have, their time and their money, right, to get. Right. And it's usually the time is the more valuable of those two commodities Absolutely. To the buyer. So the first thing is to understand that value is in the eyes of the buyer and always needs to be judged from the buyer's eyes. So if you think about how I want to market, I want to find the unique values that the buyer can get from me. So the first thing I need to do is I need to, basically start with, here's what I do uniquely, or here are my capabilities, the things I do that are interesting or important, and then filter, and then basically define what those business benefits are. Right. But if I stop there, as I said, I'm not done. So then I have to say, how much will a buyer value this business benefit? Even if you just use a simple rating like high, medium, and low, which I tend to do, I might take a list of 30 benefit statements and narrow it down to 8 or 10. Then the next question I have to ask is it unique? Can they get this value from another seller or through another approach? And then I can take that 8 to 10 down to 3 to 5. Now I've got something of value that only I can deliver and make important in the way I market and talk to buyers. So that's kind of my process. I think of it as, starting with a big bucket of sand and then putting it through these, buyer value and then competitive sieves to see what's left at the bottom.
And I really don't think we look at it that closely. I think we just assume we have value. I think we just assume that whatever business we're in, whether it's a product or a service business, we just make the assumption, well, we've got value. And people want us because it's us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's just not true because, as you so adeptly just really explain, and people need to understand, value is in the perception of the buyer.
That's right.
It's their perception of what value is. So it would behoove you, and you talk about this, of why don't you talk about people you've been already been successful with, right? And why don't you start talking to those people about what they found valuable about what you did, right? I mean, I think you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I do this all the time. Very typical when I engage with a client. In a 4 to 6 week process of doing all this that's talked about in the book, one of the first things I'll say is, let me talk to 3 or 4 of your most successful customers.
Right.
And I pretty much ask them 3 questions. What value did you expect from buying this product? Did you get that value? That's kind of question 1. Mm-hmm. Question 2 is, what values did you get that you didn't expect to get?
Right.
And then question 3 is, what value would you like out of the product or service that you're not getting?
Right.
And, that creates a pretty interesting, palette of information, so to speak, or great data to bring into a process of trying to figure out how to talk about your value. And also it ends up giving you some good ideas on how to evolve your product or service also.
See, and I loved that approach when you wrote this in the book, because I think sometimes we have a tendency to look at all the negative things. Like if, you get a negative review, or if somebody doesn't buy, we're always sitting there trying to figure out, well, why didn't they buy, right? Versus going to the people who've already purchased from you and understanding why they did. See, I think it's qualitatively 2 different things. I think we sometimes focus on how did we lose that deal versus what caused us to win that deal.
Well, and as a psychologist, right, loss aversion is a very strong motivator for people, right?
Yeah, huge.
So, I think I'm sure I would guess, propose that maybe you're a fan of Stephen Covey.
Yeah, I am a big, huge fan of Stephen Covey.
I kind of figured that. So, Covey talks about an abundance mindset, right?
Right.
And one of the shifts I think marketers need to make is there is so much business out there, right? We live in a world of abundance, and there's so many buyers out there. Let me find, taking my success, find more like that, because there's going to be more of them.
Right.
But if I don't understand who they are and what they value, then I can't maximize the number of them that I find that are like them. And so, my belief is if you can articulate your value well, that first step, you're doing better than 90% of your competitors.
Right.
And competition almost just disappears at that point.
Right.
Because those who can tell buyers what's in it for them and do it really well are really the ones who rise above the crowd and win. All the other stuff is just, the extra 20% that takes you from, successful to wildly successful.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. We're talking with Ken Rutsky, author of this outstanding book, Launching to Leading, How B2B Market Leaders Create Flashmobs, Marshal Parades, and Ignite Movements. By the way, it's available Amazon, Hudson Books, Barnes & Noble. Here, let me put it to you this way. If it's not on a bookshelf, you just go to your favorite bookstore and you tell them, I want Launching to Leading by Ken Rutsky. This is what you do, okay?
And Jay, guess what? It just came out on Audible yesterday.
Okay, so I've got some Audible credits. So guess what Jay's going to be doing with his Audible credits? He's going to be listening to this book, even though he's read this book a couple times. He's going to listen to the book over and over again because it's just so chock full of amazing marketing ideas. And we're going to talk about the Viewpoint Wheel here in a second because to me, it is the crux of this book. And so you're going to want to pay attention to the Viewpoint Wheel because creating the wheel and understanding where you are in this process is how we get to the point of whether you're at the point of flash mob, parade, or movement. And that's going to help determine that along the way. But before I do that, I got to do some business. And here's the business I have to do. And that is I have to thank our sponsor for sponsoring Ken Rutsky and this book and A New Direction. And that's Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. Are you a business owner? At some point, you're going to need the services of an experienced business broker. Selling your business is a big decision. So make sure that you build with the deal team. And these are the experts. Start there. They're the experts. Inline Business Brokers and Advisors. You can learn more. This is a B2B company, folks. And I'm telling you, if you're looking to sell your business, you want it done with confidentiality, which is their trademark. There are none better. I'm just telling you that right now. There are none better. You can find them at enlign.com. That's ENLIGN.com. Find them because I'm going to tell you they're going to help you and they're going to do an amazing job for you. And we thank them for sponsoring Ken Rutsky and his book and A New Direction with Jay Izzo. And I want to thank all of our folks so far for being with us because thank you so much for watching us live. And we want to thank our podcast listeners. And I know that I have some listeners, Ken. I've got some listeners that are in Merton, England that regularly listen to the show. So awesome. I need to shout out to my folks in Merton, England that are part of the edge of Wimbledon right there in lower London. And so I want to shout out to my friends in Merton. It's great always having you listen to the show. And I appreciate whether you catch us here live or whether you catch us on the podcast. And we thank you for always tuning in with us here. So let's move on in this segment. Let's move on to the Viewpoint Story Wheel because I felt like that this is really the crux of this book. I felt like
it is.
Yeah, I really felt like if you read all this stuff, and we've kind of given everybody kind of the some of the there's a whole lot more by the way. We didn't even cover I'm going to tell you right now, what Ken and I talked about didn't even cover 20% of this book, okay? There's so much more. But the Viewpoint Story Wheel is the heart, the soul of this book. So rather than me trying to go about it, help the listeners understand what the Viewpoint Story Wheel is and why it is so important to launching your marketing, to getting to leading. Yeah,
so it starts with this idea that stories motivate people and change people's behavior. And so if I want to be a great communicator, I really have to be a great storyteller. And when I was writing the book, I was looking at different storytelling, paradigms, and I knew about this one called the hero's journey. And the hero's journey was first proposed by a guy named Joseph Campbell, who was a cultural anthropologist. And not to get into a ton of detail there, we could talk about that for an hour. But Campbell basically said all of our mythology, whether it was religious or cultural, across the globe, followed this same story pattern, which he called a monomyth, or the hero's journey. And the really quick version of it is the heroes living their life. They get disrupted. They get sucked into an alternative reality where they have a death or near-death experience. They meet the god or goddess. They get a magical gift, and they go back to make their world a better place. If any of your listeners have seen the Lego movie, that's the perfect prototype hero's journey with Emmett. So I highly recommend that movie as a study of the hero's journey. Campbell, by the way, he consulted on the original Star Wars trilogy. So Lucas is a disciple, George Lucas, a disciple of him. So I figured and they're also used by Disney extensively. So I figured if this is good enough for George Lucas and Disney, probably good enough for me and my clients. And so I modeled this idea of the Viewpoint Story Wheel around that hero's journey and making the customer the hero as opposed to me, and making my product the magical gift in that hero's journey. So, applied to business or marketing in general, the story kind of goes like this. Chapter 1 is the world's changed, and don't you agree, Mr. Customer? Chapter 2 is if you keep doing things the way you are, you're going to be in a world of hurt, or you're going to have a lot of missed opportunities. So you're, sucked, as Campbell would say, into the depths of despair. And then chapter 3 is, to the rescue is my cool product or service, which takes a different approach, uses a different, set of methodologies or innovation, and shifts your mindset about how to solve your problems. Right. And when you do that, chapter 4 is you end up in this great, brave new world. So, the danger of being self-referential, if I use myself here and tell my story that's in the book very quickly, is that okay? I can do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the world's changed. It's a buyer-driven market. That's chapter 1. Chapter 2 is if you keep leaning on feature, function, and benefit, you're never going to break through and lead. Chapter 3 is take this approach of telling your viewpoint story, and then you'll be leading your market parade. Chapter 4. So you see how even I use that in telling my story.
Right.
And I've applied this probably about 40 or 50 times now with clients over the last decade. And I'm really excited to say my clients have created over, I think last count, about $7 billion in market cap through IPOs and acquisitions.
Wow.
And they've done a lot of things right, but one of the things they have in common is they told their story.
Right. Why are we reluctant to do that? I mean, because it seems so commonsensical to me, but yet it's really not done very frequently. I mean, we try to tell the story from our perspective, right? So often we try to say, here's our story. We started off as a mom and pop shop back in, right? Instead of making like you said, making the consumer the hero in our story. Why do you think I'm asking the psychological question to you, but I mean, I'm asking you because it just seems to me that it would make more sense. Are we that selfish? Are we that narcissistic? I don't know.
I think it's we're that passionate. We're so passionate about our products and services,
right?
Especially the ones we birthed ourselves, right?
Right, sure.
And we put so much into it. We naturally want to stand up on the mountaintop and scream about how great it is because we're rabid believers, right?
Right.
And that's awesome. That's an awesome energy to have.
Right.
We just got to harness it, and we got to harness it in a way that we put the context around our pride, right? And the context is how we can help you, not how great we are. And that's just a little bit of a shift. But man, I talk about executing with ferocity.
Right.
And there's nothing like founders who believe. to be ferocious executors.
Right.
And so you don't want to lose that, but at the same time, you got to wrap that context in the right place.
I think what you said in the book was, we call it's our baby, right?
Yeah.
And we're so proud of our baby, and look at our baby. I mean, right? Look what we created, right? We created this baby. Right.
Yeah. Have you ever sat on the airplane next to the guy who's got 4 kids like me, and he brings up his phone and you say, "Oh my God, how many pictures is he going to show me?"
It's so true.
And that's what we tend to do. We want to show the buyer every picture of the baby, from the time it was born until its college graduation.
We do. We want to show them everything that we do. Right, all the things. Read this. And I love what you said about white paper.
Yeah,
because I want to stick a fork in my eye with some of the white paper that I've read because it just makes no sense. Stop it. It's over. When you've gotten past like 3 to 5 pages, I'm done with reading your white papers. Okay, it's that true. But we even in business, we are so proud of our baby that we want to tell everybody about the baby. But then what we forget is that the person who's in the other airplane seat, well, they really don't care about your baby. They want to know what's in it for me. What's in it for me? Are you giving me your children? Because I've got children of my own. Would you like to see mine? They're 30. Would you like to see them? Would you like to see them? No. So
right. But if you sat down next to someone who was, going through, say, a medical crisis with their child that your child had been through.
Right.
Think how excited they would be to see the recovery pictures that you showed.
Yeah, especially if the guy happened to be a surgeon who did that type of thing.
There you go.
Right. I mean, if you knew the psychographic of that person who was sitting next to you, right? Then you can shift the conversation. You may be interested in this. We're talking with Ken Rutsky, author. Book launching to leading, a marketing book that will blow your mind. I'm just telling you, it will blow your mind. It has mine. So we've got this Viewpoint Story model that we're using that you so eloquently put together, and it's beautiful. And by the way, there's an appendix in the back of this book. So if you're looking for pictures, there are pictures that he's drawn that are drawn up of these models and how they work. And I thought it was really interesting how you were able to take 4 different situations, apply it to the Viewpoint Story Wheel. And I found myself in that 4th category as a B2B person, as a consultant, is that inspirational piece. So maybe you could talk about maybe a little bit of these 4 areas, the pain and what percentage you use of different things. Can you...
Yeah, if you think about the story, I think the part you're referring to is, there's 4 kind of story types hidden in that wheel, right? The first one is really about, the world and how the world has changed. And, my poster child company for that is a company here in Silicon Valley called Zuora, Zuora. And those guys do subscription billing and accounting software. You can't get a lot more dry than billing and accounting software, right? But what they did is they really went on a mission to educate the market about the change from buying to subscribing of products. We're now in our house Quip toothbrush users. Right? So we even get our toothbrush on subscription now. How weird is that, right?
Oh, right.
This. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I've seen this whole thing about they deliver toothbrushes like every
I think it's every 90 days.
Yeah, every 3 months. Yeah. So that you don't use the same toothbrush too long, because who doesn't use the same toothbrush too long?
Exactly. And it's a pretty good toothbrush. It's a nice product and a nice service. But what Zuora did is they basically said, look, it's turning into a subscription economy. Let me educate you, if you sell products or services, why you need to go from a purchase mindset to a subscription one. And then, by the way, when you need the billing software to help you get there, I've got it. Right? So they didn't spend a lot of time on the rest of the story about why your billing software is broken and the problems you're going to have with your current solution and the magical thing I have and how I'm going to transform your business. They just went straight for, let me explain the world to you and how I can help you.
Right.
Yeah, and then you can keep going around. The second one is, I could just basically say, look, I feel your pain, Mr. Customer,
Right.
Because I know what you're doing today to solve your problems, and I understand the pain you're in or the opportunities you're missing. One of my clients, FireEye, used that very effectively, and they're an IT security company, and they basically just said, hey, the threats out there have changed, and if you keep trying to defend yourself the way you are, you're in big trouble.
Right.
And they spent most of their time explaining why the current solutions were broken. And then, I call that kind of the all pain, no gain
Right.
story. And then they went on to say, oh, and I've got the magical thing that can help you. Where one of their fellow travelers in IT security, a company named Palo Alto Networks, they just went straight for what I call the better mousetrap version of the story, which is it's time to fix, in their case, the category was called the firewall. It's time to fix the firewall. We've got a better one. Now, they still told the whole story from, the world's changed. If you keep using your current firewall, you're going to have all these problems. We've got a better one, and it's going to make your life better. But they really just focused on that better mousetrap part of the story. And then lastly, and this is where I pull from the consumer world a little bit, my former favorite airline, Virgin America, which doesn't exist anymore, may they rest in peace, basically said, hey, flying doesn't have to suck. We're going to make flying great again. And man, they delivered with the whole experience of flying on Virgin America, which was headquartered out of San Francisco and had a big hub there, was just awesome. And they went right to the end of the story, which is we're making flying great again. Yeah. And they didn't have to tell you all the pain you had when you did business flying. You already knew that. Right. So you can choose where to focus your story on which of those chapters. And there's some guidance in the book around how to pick whether you're in a growth market or a replacement market or a new market or a growth or a stagnant market. Certain of these story types tend to perform better depending on the characteristics of the market you're in.
That's awesome. We're talking with Ken Rutsky, author of the book Launching to Leading. Got it backwards there for a second. Available where books are sold. By the way, I need to just interrupt here for a second for those folks who are listening to the podcast. Nothing happened. You listened to Ken all the way through, but for those of you who may have been watching on Facebook Live, for whatever reason, we ended and we're back on again. So I want to apologize to all those people who are now joining us back and wondering what happened. Well, technology is never perfect, and so we just had a technological glitch. I apologize. We're back up live. So we thank you for rejoining us, those of you who are doing that as well. And I know that so many of these folks who are on are also going to listen to the podcast again. So, Ken, we're down. Do you know we've almost been on an hour?
I know. It's going fast, huh?
It always does. This always happens with the people that I interview. I find that I'm so engaged, and I'm having such a good time with them. I hope you're having a good time too, as well.
I'm having a great time, Jay.
But it just seems to go really fast, and I get so bummed because I'm like going, I don't want it to end because I got more questions, Ken, and they aren't going to stop. And what it makes me say is, you know what, you got to buy the book is what you got to do. I'm not quite done with Ken. I'm going to ask him a couple more questions, but really, if you are into marketing, and by the way, I don't care what kind of marketing you are into, and I know that it says how B2B market leaders create Flashmobs, Marshal parades, and ignite movements, and I know that's what it says here, but I'm going to encourage any of you people who are in marketing to pick up this book. By the way, CEOs, I want you to also pick up this book. CMOs, CEOs, CTOs, you need to pick this book up, and the reason why you need to pick this book up is because this is more than just a book for just a marketing person. I mean, this has got so much information that's so relative to so many people. So I'm going to really, really encourage you to please pick up this book, and because it's a great book. So I want to talk about the last three things because before we leave you, and we may go a little bit over time if you don't have a hard three. So the things at the bottom of the book is just create flash mobs, parades, movements. And I found that to be a fascinating part of the end of the book, was how you defined flash mobs and parades and movements and where you were at. So give us a quick overview and then keep us wanting for more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quick overview is it kind of says it in those three words, right? A flash mob is that crowd of early people who gather because they're passionate about what you're playing and what you do. And so when we're in the early stage of our leadership journey, we're really trying to find those close in buyers who really see us and just become passionate. And then I moved to the parade, where this is, about what's going on in the world, back to steep, right? And how do I hook into something like the subscription economy with my value? And parades can take you all the way to an IPO, right? I mean, they're very, very powerful and beyond. And then, a few companies get to the movement stage, which essentially is changing the world.
Right.
And, when you're doing that, man, you are just already, hugely successful, hugely known. And as you go through those stages, everything from your business objective to your communication objective to your marketing mix changes, as well as your audience. So at the beginning, it's really the problem owner, right? At the flash mob, who's the person I can help today and going to dance crazy for me? At the parade, it really becomes more of the C-level sponsor who's looking for that strategic transformation. And then by the time I get to the movement, it's like I'm trying to hobnob with those other CEOs on how I can change the world. So, everything changes depending where I am in that continuum. And the beautiful thing is they all build on each other. And one of the mistakes we make is we get a little tunnel vision into the stage we're in. So, I talk about talking about your purpose when you're starting your parade, because when you get to the movement stage, a lot of this is about purpose. Right. But if I totally ignore purpose until then, it's too late. Or really thinking about your story at the flash mob stage, because the story still has to bring people in, and it's going to become critically important as I transition from the flash mob to the parade. So in the back of the book, I think it's on page 154, if I remember right, we kind of summarize the different stages and what you need to do to move from one to the other.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Matter of fact, it is. It's on page 154. That's really good. I'm holding it up so people can actually see it if they want to look at it. I know you people listening on podcasts can't see it, but it is really on on page 154. To let you know. You've been awesome, Ken.
Well, thank you. It's been great. I've enjoyed our chat.
This has been a lot of fun, and I've really enjoyed it. And so what I always ask my guests to do is, the show's called A New Direction. So I ask my guests if you could leave my listeners, I call them my listeners, they're really not mine, they're on loan to me, they're our listeners. If you could give them a new direction when it comes to launching to leading and marketing, what would be your new direction?
Yeah, my new direction would be to put the buyer at the center of your story and make them the hero.
Beautifully done. Well done, succinctly. Hold on with me, will you, Ken?
Sure.
See, everybody, that's the show, right? We have to thank, of course, our sponsor, Nline Business Brokers and Advisors. They have been a part of the show. We've got to thank them for sponsoring Launching to Leading and Ken Rutsky today. They were awesome. Listen, when it's time to sell your business, right, call those folks at Nline Business Brokers and Advisors. It's nline.com. It's very simple, ENLIGN.com. And folks, as I tell you every week as I close the show, look, be inspired, because when you're inspired, you can inspire someone else. And when you're inspiring someone else, in turn, they get inspired. That allows our world to change. And so, change the world. Be inspired. I will talk to you soon. Ciao, everybody.
When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense, got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never been before. Find your passion, find your strength.